Good day, everyone. I have the privilege of sharing to you a little bit of my life today. By the way, I am Jonathan Chong. I am the eldest child of Alonzo and Aurora Chong. My parents has been used by God as part of the group of people who started this church 34 years ago. And having done so, that means that I've been part of this church ever since it started. But for those who are familiar with my testimony, I never really became a genuine child of God until about 15 years ago. But that's another story. This day, I've been tasked on how I foster obedience in the workplace. You see, as a I have been called into the ministry of business. And and one of our desires is not only to create people that are skilled in their work and who embraces the core values of our organization, but one of our desires is that we will also help people get to know God more and obey His word. So let me share to you three principles that we do in our organization. It's not exhaustive, it's not a complete list, but it will give you a general view on how we do this. Number one is communicate. If there is a new policy that we want to put in place in our organization, we make sure that we communicate it. It is either through memos or through verbal communication. You see, we believe that you cannot expect some things from people without letting them know what those expectations are. We believe that it's unfair to ask people of things in which we did not communicate to them clearly. We believe that it is a part of our responsibility to let them know what is expected of them so that they will be able to be successful in their task. And the second thing that we do is that when we implement this policy, this new policy, is we make sure that the infrastructure for this new policy is ready. So when I'm talking about infrastructure, I'm referring to is the workplace ready, the physical workplace ready for the new policy. And if not the workplace, then is the processes, the systems in the workplace, is it ready for the new policy? You see, if you don't have this prepared properly, you're just like asking your staff that this is the standard of your new policy, but because of the limitation of the workplace and the processes, you're just telling them that they will just reach up to here. And that will lead to frustrations, and that would lead to losing of trust, and that will also not encourage obedience in the workplace. Why would they bother obeying something which they are set up to fail in the first place? And lastly, it's to monitor. You see, there's a lot of people who sometimes implements new systems, and yes, they have the infrastructure ready, but they don't bother monitoring the new policy that was set in place. Do we need to adjust something? Do we need to improve on something? Or do we need to take away something for it to be implementable in the actual workplace? And because they do not monitor as well, they don't have the ability to implement disciplinary actions for those who does not obey. And for some, it's not just not being able to monitor, that they fail to implement discipline. For some, they don't even have the fortitude to implement the discipline. And without disciplinary actions for breaking the new set policy, you cannot expect for that policy to be able to be implemented properly. So we must have the fortitude to discipline, but most of all, we must have the discipline to monitor the new set policy. Now, I'm not saying that because I'm sharing this to you that we as an organization, as a company, we're doing this perfectly. No, we fail in so many aspects of this. But more or less, this is our guiding principles when we try to foster obedience in our workplace. But I'm not also saying that that the workers in our organization are the very obedient people. Just like your organizations, we have good apples and bad apples as well. But you see, when Pastor Joe asked me to share this testimony to you, we had a short discussion about obedience. And we both understood that obedience from the heart is not something that you can achieve by creating these policies or these systems. That obedience from the heart is not created from implementing disciplines. That obedience from the heart really comes from a person whose heart has changed. First and foremost, to the command giver. And I was blessed enough, by the grace of God, that, as I've said, 15 years ago, He has changed my heart from the heart of stone to a living heart. And with that, He has changed my outlook and my identity. Before, I used to look at myself as a businessman who is a Christian. And because that was my point of view, my guiding principle was how to make the business grow rather than God's principles. But with the change of heart, God has made me see that I am first and foremost a child of God who is called to do business. So now I am a Christian who is a businessman. And my guiding principles on how I do business as much as I can, though I fail at times, but as much as I can, I do business following godly principles and not of this world. And because of that, one of the things that He has shown me is that the workplace is a ministry. And if we understand that only a person who obeys from the heart has a heart that has been changed by God, and that change will only come through Jesus Christ, through the gospel, then we made it a point that every week the gospel is preached in our workplace. We have weekly small groups. And these weekly small groups talks about values and problems, in the workplace or in the family. But most of all, we make sure that the gospel is being preached. And that we hope and pray that one day, as we continue to do this work, God will use it to some of these people's lives and change their heart. And because their hearts are changed, they will the heart to obey His word. Thank you.